Hey YouTube, this is Exellion coming at you with a little bit of a Diablo 4 retrospective. Stay tuned. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and encourage you guys to like and subscribe. Make sure you comment below on what your favorite part of this video is and what maybe you think the September 2020 quarterly update for Diablo 4 is going to consist of. Now, this is going to be one more conversational video. I hope you guys can follow along with me and maybe pretend like you're in the conversation just listening. So let's get started. So November 2019, let's go ahead and rewind. Let's talk about just a quick recap of all of the updates, all that we know so far about Diablo 4. 3 classes have been officially announced: the Barbarian, the Druid, the Sorceress, each with their own unique arsenals at their disposal. The Barbarian with what is actually called an arsenal system, the Sorceress wielding fire, cold, and lightning, and the Druid, the ability to cast storm abilities and to shapeshift into wolf or werebear form. So we also have skill trees. This consists of both talents and skill trees. They talk about permanent character progression. They talk about the ability to hunt down skill tomes to level up your skills, including getting skill points when you level up. They also talk about a dedicated talent tree for character customization. These will be what unlock more power towards specific skill sets. So let's say you unlock a skill, the talent related to that skill will buff that skill in some way. They showed off a lot of gameplay. I myself had an opportunity to play Diablo 4 at Blizzcon 2019. It felt very polished. They break it down into specific categories. They talked about talents, they talked about skill points, they talked about runes, loot, legendary loot of all kinds, randomized dungeons, and the biggest part, the biggest new thing about Diablo that I think is open world. Now, open world, they broke it down even further and they talked to us about the points of interest, where towns are more social hubs. This is where people start to think, oh, this feels almost like an MMO. But it is going to be a shared player world with public events, and you'll have the ability to play completely solo, or you can go and group up with others, group up with party members, go through dungeons, and explore the open world that way as well. They had the Ashava world event, the world boss for you guys to battle at the BlizzCon 2019 demo. You would just walk up to it and other players would be there fighting it. They talked more about runes. They talk about the condition rune versus the effect rune, and how when a certain condition is met, the effect rune will then proc and certain things will happen. They talk about mixing multiple effect runes with a condition rune, or vice versa, multiple condition runes with an effect rune. Not everyone was on board with this. I myself have questions about this. I will be posting an impressions video of all of these changes later on, so make sure you stay tuned for that. They go into dungeons. They just talk about the 3 pillars of dungeons that they were really trying to strive for when they create dungeons. They talk about variety, strategic depth, and player agency. They want to give everybody sort of the ability to choose what happens and where to go in the dungeon. They don't want to make it feel super linear. And then they go into the world itself, the world of Sanctuary, and they give us a little bit more of an unveiling, if you will, of what kind of areas and regions we're going to be encountering in Sanctuary. The first one they show us is Skosglen. It is sort of like where the feral wild druids live and protect their own realm. Fractured peaks, sort of a rocky, mountainous surroundings, frozen landscape, home to monks, which I don't really know what that means, if they're going to be the same monks from Diablo 3. They talk about the dry steppes, and it's a dry, very barren region. There's barbarians, mercenaries, blood mages, all that stuff. Hawazar is a toxic swampland area where, you know, death dealers and witches tend to flock to. And then they talk about Kyrgyzstan, which is once an empire for civilization and luxury, which also houses a lot of ancient evils, which are starting to become unearthed in Diablo 4. So the story, they really want us to kind of understand the story, but there's a whole lot of question marks still to be named. For instance, in the intro cinematic, a lot of speculation was going around that Rathma was the necromancer, was the one character that brought Lilith and summoned Lilith with the blood ritual. But initially, we know that Sanctuary was created by an angel and a demon. We now know to be Inarius and Lilith. Lilith, the daughter of Mephisto. Inarius, once a faithful advisor to the Angiras Council, both sort of rebelled and procreated and created what now is humanity on Sanctuary. Demons and corrupt wildlife have taken over Sanctuary. It's starting to grow and to spread. and especially with Lilith now returning, which we still have yet to understand why she has returned. To what end is she here? Is she good or bad? A lot of people are thinking bad. I'm thinking bad, but again, that's going to be another comment for my impressions and personal opinions video on the current state of Diablo 4 in the story. Her return has very much exacerbated a lot of devout and faithful to sort of question their own beliefs and to start worshiping the mother of creation, which is her, and performing all kinds of crazy blood rituals and pretty spooky stuff. So that was BlizzCon. After BlizzCon, we received an open letter from the game director, Luis Barriga, who has stated specifically that every single quarter we would be receiving an update about Diablo 4 and the development process. And they're going to be reviewing all feedback and takeaways from BlizzCon and from their actual quarterly updates that they give to us. After this letter came out, we received a system design update pretty shortly after, and they talk about itemization, they talk about elective mode, ancient items for legendaries, end game progression, and they talk about, if they want to do sort of like a Paragon system with a max level, or if they want to make it a really, really hard to attain maximum level and have that experience equate to Paragon. And they talk about all these things that are going to sort of create our experience as the Diablo community and what we can look forward to. They also talk a lot about sources of power, where the source of power should come from for your characters. Should they be from items? Should they be from your levels, from your talents and skills? So they're trying to break down and make it the most fine-grained experience for all of us so that we can go back to the roots of what Diablo is. And then they talked about key dungeons, which are sort of the end game. I equate them to maps from Path of Exile. You'll drop randomly a key, and this key can have different affixes and properties to them that when you go and use them on a dungeon, it will open up a randomly generated dungeon of that type and have all these different affixes and changes to them. And I think it could be pretty cool. It's very close and borderline map from Path of Exile, so I guess we'll have to see how that goes. Shortly after the system design update 1, we received a second update solely about itemization. And I think this was really important because it talks a lot about how they want to take the best parts of previous games and improve upon them while introducing new elements to make Diablo 4 unique. And it's all very, very early design, all of the item concepts, all of the powers that they're introducing, the affixes. So there are 3 new affixes to the items in Diablo 4. There's demonic power, there's angelic power, and ancestral power. Demonic power sort of enhances the negative effects that you have on enemies, so that damage over time or debuffs. Angelic power enhances the positive effects, the buffs, the healing, and the ancestral power will increase the chance for certain things to proc or occur. So like maybe crit chance, or maybe there's a 10% chance that when you use this ability, they'll get poisoned. That ancestral power increase will increase that proc chance. One thing that they stated in this particular update was that they are going to be removing ancient legendaries from the original design. So with the absence of ancient legendaries, they actually are going to be introducing a consumable. This consumable can be used on rare items, and it will be introducing legendary buffs to these rare items. February 2020 rolled around, and they started talking about UI design, controller support, co-op, and the monster families we'll encounter in Diablo. So UI design, they went over specifically inventory, bindings, and being able to rebind your skills to different keys and different clicks. They also talk about the left corner action bar, whether it should be in the corner, whether it should be centered in the middle, or what. It sounds like they're going to have an option for PC to do either the left corner or the bottom middle. Whereas console players will be kind of forced to have it in the left corner, which seems to be kind of the norm for consoles. They talk about controller support. So they want to make the controller experience seamless on both PC and console. They don't want to have a completely different UI just because there's a controller plugged in. They want to make it a seamless experience. They tap a little bit into co-op and what that experience is going to be like. And they talk about the monster families, cultist, drowned, and the cannibals. I'm sure we'll be introduced to more as we go along. We haven't even heard anything about any sort of demonic foes or enemies that are going to be coming into Diablo 4. And now we're over to June already. In the June 2020 quarterly update, they discuss how the Blizzard team is now working from home due to the COVID-19 pandemic occurring. And I believe to this day here in September, they are still doing so. So with that being said, they are keeping the momentum going. They are determined. I have faith in them. And they talk about specifically in this update, the team playtest that they have been running through, and they continue to go through every single time that they iterate. And this focus specifically in June was on the Dry Steppes region. Now, this is the same region, I believe, that we played at the BlizzCon demo, which wasn't fully available to us. There were only a few things that we could actually play at the BlizzCon demo. But they did talk a little bit about the blocking process, which is a pretty cool process where they sort of create and map out the actual environment with these kind of grayscale blocks first to sort of create the foundation and the structure. And then afterwards, they'll lay on the aesthetic, lay on the art, and create a more refined experience visually for all of us. So this update showed blocking assets from both regions and levels, but also from a couple monsters. That one specific monster looks like maybe a Balrog or a demon of some kind. It was pretty awesome for us to see what the dev process is, and it's almost like an attempt for them to put us in their shoes. As I mentioned before, they're looking for that empathy. They want to make us feel heard, but they also want to feel like we hear them. They talk about storytelling in this update, specifically the conversations that you're going to be having with NPCs and what the difference is going to be between a simple conversation, a simple interaction with NPC, a more complex interaction that may be like a mini cutscene, and then a full-blown RTC, they say real-time cutscene, where they will cut close to the actual characters in the conversation and will have an equivalent graphical experience that you have your settings to. Your character will be all in of its existing armor and equipment, and it will just be they showed images as you see right here. It looks phenomenal. It looks really, really crisp and clear, and these are still early stages of this feature, so I'm excited to see where this goes. They expand more upon the open world of Diablo 4, and you can complete the campaign at your own pace. I think that's pretty cool. You know, don't feel rushed. You can go around, do some side quests, and get a little bit stronger before you continue on with the campaign. Social hubs are going to be like towns and things like that are going to be where you might see some other players. You don't have to engage with them or interact with them even. You may occasionally run past some other players, but that's just sort of, I think, to give you that experience that there are other adventurers on the case. They're on the job of saving Sanctuary. So in this update, they also talk about items and progression. Now they want to really nail itemization. They really want to nail progression. They want it to feel impactful. So what they said specifically was that they want Diablo 4 to be the game you're playing even when you're not playing it. So in your head, you're constantly running through builds, possibilities, what items you're going to need, how you can refine your build, and give you sort of that nostalgic experience we all had when we were playing the original Diablo games, and how we can theory craft maybe a little bit and make our build the best one. So they also gave us a couple more thoughts there at the end, that this is not anywhere near an alpha or even a beta stage yet. And they also talk about their client server technology, which seemed pretty cool. They didn't really give us any solid information on this, but they did say that they were deploying builds with fixes to bugs during the playtest. For me as a developer, I just think, oh, they're just gonna, run the build, and then players will have to log off all the server updates and come back in. But if they're meaning this literally, then they can deploy bug fixes and hotfix stuff while the service is live. That's pretty huge. I don't know if that's what the case is. That kind of technology is really hard to master. But if they're building this from the ground up with new tech, with a new engine, it wouldn't really surprise me if something new like that came to be. It would be revolutionary. But we'll just have to wait and see what they say on that.